The first thing that I want to show you is called the Wave Accessibility Tool. We talked about this about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. No, yeah, 2 years ago now. Oh my gosh. At our in-person workshop. And because we're not doing that anymore, we're going to be revisiting some of these tools. So the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, or WAVE, is actually a group of tools that helps you make your website a little bit more accessible, or a lot of it accessible. And before you think that you have to redo your whole website because you never knew about this tool, you don't have to do that. And that's because the practices that I've shared with you as we have built or maintained your website are accessibility methods. I build every single website with accessibility in mind and design. And good design equals good accessibility. If you're providing a good user experience by doing all of the things correctly the first time, then you're also being accessible. So one thing that we do, or I do, is you can plug in your desired page URL into this tool, and it's going to give us notes on what we can improve and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad and da-da-da. So you'll see that you can hover right over things to get notes. There's some alerts, there's some errors. It says there's 102 structural elements on this page, and there's contrast errors. So let's talk about that first, contrast. When I build your website, the default font color that I use is black, because black on white or white on black is the highest contrast that you can get, and that is the most helpful for those who are living with sight loss issues or visibility issues. So this right here, if we want to go to the contrast issues, it says one of the issues is hyperlinks on each page. And this is a very interesting thing. The website, standard web practices are having your hyperlinks be blue, and that's not really a very nice color to provide contrast, especially this WVLS light blue that matches our logo, right? So that is where style and substance are going to fight. If you want to be absolutely friendly, you should consider a dark yet visibly different color for hyperlinks. And that's just something you're going to have to explore. You'll also see that there's an H1, H2, H2, H5, H5, H2. Well, the problem here is when you have this tool up and it's trying to write notes on the screen here, Divi is actually displaying, responsively. So when I have a window up in addition to a Divi web page, the Divi web page is going to naturally change to best fit the browser. Unfortunately, that means that it shoves some of the columns that are side by side on top of each other. Let me show you what I mean. So you have to take the recommendations from this tool with a grain of salt, because you're going to know your website the best, and you know how the website is laid out might not be reflected in the tool as it's giving you notes, which might be a little confusing. Now, what does that mean? What I'm talking about are the reason we use the headers or the title texts here called headers, header 1, header 2, header 2, header 2. This should be header 3, but it's not, so that's a boo-boo. It's for those who have sight issues and are using a screen reader to navigate your web page. Their screen reader follows the sizes that you use to build a path through the page as it reads it aloud to its user. So first off, using appropriate headers in order is visually appealing and it's accessible. So that's how we're already building an accessibility. Okay. So you guys can spend this time poking around on the WAVE Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool by just going to wave.webaim.org. And I'm going to put that in the chat for you if I can find you. Maybe. Here we go. I'm just going to put that link right in the chat. You can play with that and learn and poke around on it. The other thing to know is many websites I work on regularly have a mobile-friendly version and a desktop version or desktop tablet version. So if someone's using a calculator, please mute yourself. Oh, okay.
What?
I'm going to mute
Sorry,
that.
that's me, and I'm trying to find mute on my phone. So I heard you, and I'm trying to do it.
You have one of those fancy calculators that prints it out, too. I don't know how to use those. I'm not fluent in that kind of calculator. So, and as you go through the messages on the screen, it's going to tell you, hey, this is a 5th level heading element, but there's nothing up above it that's 4, 3, right? So you need 1, 2, 2. Now you need a 3. You can't jump from a 2 to a 5. And again, that's something that I should have taken care of when I built your website, and it's something that I look at when I go through your website to address different issues. So that's good. Let's go on to something that is a little bit more doable right now and is super fast. Let's talk about adding alternative text to your images. So, alternative text on an image, you can find that when you upload the image. There's a title, there's alternative text, and there's caption and description. If you put something in caption, chances are that it will be displayed on the page as well, so I don't tend to do that. The two most important fields for an image are alternative text and title. And many times they can be the same if you're lazy like I am. So let me show you what we're talking about here. When you build a website, you include images of all kinds. Here's some graphics that I made. Here's some movie cover images. Here's Gale courses. Here's the logo. Again, if a person is using a screen reader, they aren't going to be able to read an image without any text attached to it. Alternative text is the only information that a screen reader can pull out of an image to tell to their user. The other reason alternative text is important is if an image fails to load or it's deleted from the media library and it's still being used on a web page, alternative text will display there. So people, rather than saying, oh, this website is not being kept up, instead of an error mark, it'll have the alternative text in that space, so they'll at least have an idea of what was meant to be there while the webmaster is fixing that in the background. So let's get more specific here. So I built this page for Crandon. Crandon has no responsibility for the boo-boos on this page. That's my public disclaimer. I'm going to add alternative text to these images. What you do is you go to your media library and you click on the images that you want to add alternative text to. You'll see that Crandon also has book covers on here because they have a carousel on their home page. It's worth it to have something in the alternative text area in addition to the title area, even for a book cover, especially if you have a carousel. Now, if your media library is chock full of things that you are no longer using, you should seriously consider getting rid of old book covers or old images that are no longer important. Because all of these book covers and images that aren't being used, they're taking up memory on your website, which could mean that your website could be operating more slowly. And also, if you have all of those images on one page and you just keep piling more and more images on one page because you don't want to get rid of your browsing images, and in the chance someone is continuing to scroll to the bottom of your screen, memory is money. If someone is using a smartphone and they're roaming and they have to download that page, they're going to download every single image and that is going to cost them data, and data is money. And they might run out of data on their plan. Now that's extreme, but that is one of the functionality, so speed of your website, and also pocket change. You want to save your people money and provide a good experience and a fast experience. So if you have lots of old images that you don't need, I repeat, get rid of them. What you can do is up at the top of your screen, you can choose bulk select and just drag it all the way to the bottom of your media library and select all the old stuff or old stuff that you know that you want to get rid of near the top as well. Okay, on to adding alternative text. Now, when you upload any image to your media library while you're building on your website, it's easiest if you just do the work right then and there. So when you want to embed this image on a screen, it's best if you take the time to put in a title and put in alternative text right then and there. So you don't have to go in and do this at a later time. Okay, so your title can be something shorter, like the header in the image or whatever you're doing. Now the alternative text in a perfect world should have every single piece of information from your image in there. Okay? Because again, that's the only information that a screen reader is going to pull for a person using a screen reader with sight loss, and if the image fails to load. Additionally, that contributes to search engine optimization, meaning the internet's going to love your website more if you have more information. And so it'll bump up your website in the search results. Anybody have any questions so far? I know I covered a lot and I didn't pause, so I'm sorry about that. So unmute yourselves and ask me questions or type it into the chat. Yes. Okay, so somebody had a question. Any advice in labeling media or files that are really documents like reports? When you're in your media library, I'm going to scroll down here because Crandon had a few things. You can tell what's an image and what's a document because here it says it's a PDF and it's not displaying an image. So that's a visual cue. That's nice. That's one way of doing it. What you could, Gina, you're a cataloger, so you are super into detail. So I'm thinking that you might be interested in having a labeling scheme.
That's right.
I know, but the media library doesn't work that way. Here's how you can sort. You can sort by audio, video, documents, spreadsheets, archives, unattached, mine.
So you can't sort by date anyway.
Here you can do all dates, December, October, September. So these are when things are added. So if I didn't add anything in a certain month, it wouldn't be on here.
Okay.
So you can build in things manually and there are plugins that I do not use that work within your media library to organize things on a visual page. You know, Rebecca Kildee from IFLIS did this to create their knowledge base. But in the end, a regular library website is not like a systems website. And so
Yeah,
you and
a
I
little
have
different.
yes, you and I have more issues than this, because a general library website should not be a repository or an archive. It is a living communication tool, and it's not meant to hold documents for 15 years, 20 years, whatever. Systems tend to hang on to things on their websites. You know, we put all these agendas and meetings and stuff on there, but in the grand scheme of things, websites ideally should be treated as not an instance of time, but they should not have to hold on to things that are super de-duper old, unless it's a traditional thing. You know, every year we do a Christmas artisan gala, and so here's the past 5 years for pictures or whatever, but they're not going to have the depth of meeting materials and guidelines and training and stuff that a system does. So let's get back to these images here. You'll see that alternative text for a book cover, it makes sense to have the title be the alternative text. You could go a step further and say by Evie Green. Now, when it comes to a Storytime graphic, you could say Storytime Tuesdays at 10:30. You don't have to say there are yellow arrows and a yellow circle and white Storytime text. Sometimes people give visual descriptions if, yes, it is decorative, but it's very important. So let's say you have a visual of a piece of artwork that you have permission to be sharing for possibly like a virtual a museum or art tour, then you could put a visual description in there. But for the most part, that's not what we're doing here. So crafting for adults, all it has on here is crafting for adults. There's no extra information, so that's okay. All right, let's keep going. Here's one for WizCat. So they have a button on their page for WizCat. It only has a title, so what I'm going to do is copy that and put that in alternative text. There's no other language on the blurb, so I'm not going to put it on there. Here are some images of their space into the children's area from this past summer. The gates of Atlantis, entering the children's area. So I would copy that and put it in the alternative text, and it should be good to go. Same with the school. Oops. Control Z is your friend. Control paste for that. Here's a slider. If your library uses sliders, you want to put every single thing, every information detail on your slide into alternative text. So ideally this would say, Crandon Public Library is open regular hours, and it would list the hours, visits limit to 30 minutes, curbside still available. So all of that would go in alternative text. That is why I think in the future we will we're trying to move away from slides into more of a blog, blog post setup, or a post slider. So the TB Scott Library in Merrill uses a post slider on the page here so that they can have an image and then text here, and that would take care of that disconnection between having a slider and also making it super accessible and also mobile friendly. This style is way more mobile friendly than a slider in that when I make my screen smaller, it'll continue to shrink and be accessible on a phone in that format. You know, the text dropped beneath it. But if you have a slider, it's not awesome on a phone. The text becomes teeny weeny. And so one way that Amory has gotten around that to keep it looking good and accessible, they have created square blurbs on their page so that It saves time in building their website, and it's also accessible on a phone. It still looks nice, right? Okay. So that's still a lot of information. It's something that you're going to learn the more that you are in your website. There are caveats, of course, but we can cover those more later on. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to check the chat now. Okay. Okay, how detailed should we get with alternative text? And again, you know, if it's just a decorative image and there's not really any text on there, you don't need alternative text. If it is an image that says story time 10:30 on Wednesdays, put all of that in there. You don't have to describe the image, like I said, unless it's a very special circumstance. Alternative text should have alt text on a logo. I would say yes. I would say a Tomahawk Public Library on there. Especially since usually web standard is if you click on a logo at the bottom of the page or places like that, it should take you to the home page. So if I click on the logo at the top, it'll bring me back to the home page. So yes, I would suggest that you put alternative text for a logo. The Merrill Library actually doesn't have a logo, so I can't show you that on here. Where was I? I was here. Okay. Yep. How do you save edits to the alt text when you add or change anything to it? I tried changing mine yesterday when I realized it was showing the file name. Good catch, Aaron. And it looked like it auto-saved, but it's still showing the file name. What library are you from, Aaron? I'm seeing AAPL. Amory. Got it. That's right, Aaron Hunter. Okay. So other things to consider are checking the URL at the top of the page. Very nice. Look at how big these images are. And the text in them is really big. So when I look at it on my phone, I should be able to read everything. Okay. I'm seeing that this is a larger text than this, so you might consider adjusting your header sizes or bumping this below, and that should be good. She mentioned taking a look at the alternative text on some of these images. So I enabled my visual builder. I'm going to click onto this image module. I'm going to click into the images and just browse around in here. So alternative winter reading adults. Okay. Paper logo. Family story time. So this one just says winter reading option 2. I'm just going to experiment. So adult winter reading challenge option 2, and I'm going to click out of that box. And this one says paper log, so I'll add that in here. Okay, I'm going to click out of it. I'm not even going to touch on that. I'm going to click exit, exit visual builder, save and exit. I didn't change anything on this page. And now I'm going to go into the media library to see if that change stuck, Aaron. So I'm going to click into the backside, media, see which one. Okay. So one thing, Aaron, is if you're editing it in the media library like this, sometimes it's really picky in that you should click out of it, right? So instead of just leaving my cursor in there and then exiting, you might want to click out of it into a different area. Okay, so if I put that in here and then I don't click out of it and I exit out, let's see if it's stuck. Oh, it did. Okay. if you made changes in the visual builder, I'm going to tell you right away that the visual builder is way more finicky than the traditional editing on the back end side. You have less control and it's less obvious when it is being saved and when it's not saved. And sometimes I notice my visual builder is slow to respond to what I'm telling it to do. So chances are it was just a hiccup, Erin. So why don't you experiment right now? I'm not in any of your pages, and let me know how that goes for you while we're here. And if you still have trouble, yep, you work on the back end usually. Okay. Yeah, Google Sheets does the same kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Someone asks, so to confirm, we should enter information in the alternative text and title sections, but not any others. Well, rule of thumb, those are the two most important fields. So yes, but you don't have to not put it in those other areas. And let me show you an example of why. So WVLS website is a system website, and okay. Crandon having that video on their homepage makes the internet operate more slowly. Okay. I'm going to show you, here we go, where a caption would come in handy to have that area filled out. There should, yes. So here's an old director's retreat page way back in the day when I started. I didn't start in 2017, but you can tell my skills have improved, right? So if we click into the gallery of photos from that day, you're going to see the captions displayed. Yep. So this is a circumstance where you would want the caption to have information on it. So this is the title. This is the alternative text in the caption. Does that make sense, Heather? It is very specific to your web page needs, but in general, you really only need the title and the alternative text. Yep. And when I hover over it, it's going to tell me the title of the image, not the caption. So again, the title is important. Okay. Cool. I'm going to stop recording because we are done with the accessibility portion.